want Xander up here.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Okay. Good morning. I'll call the order of the RTC meeting of April the 5th, 2018, with a roll call, please.
Von Hartung.
Here.
Bob Lucy.
Here.
Ron Smith.
Here?
Lee Gibson.
Here.
Dale Ferguson.
Here.
Bill Hoffman.
Here.
And two guest speakers,
Ryan and Anthony.
Ryan and Anthony. Thank you. We have a quorum.
All right.
Okay, yeah. Okay, if you'll all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, we'll have Ryan and Anthony lead us in the pledge.
Ready, boys?
You start.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job.
Done, gentlemen.
Okay, we'll open the public comment period. I do have one card, and that is for Philip. Did you want to, okay, I'll finish what I'm saying here. Philip, did you want to talk on 3.5, or did you want to come down during public comment? 3.5 would be fine. Okay, so let me back up and, looking for approval for the agenda. Anybody want to pull anything? Mr. Lucy?
No, look, approve the agenda as drafted, sir.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Now I'll open up the public comment period. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the 2.2. Accept the monthly summary report for technical citizens, multimodal, and regional road impact fee advisory committees.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Okay, consent items. There is some public comment, so we'll take that now on 3.5. Philip Cooney. Come on down, sir. And 3.5 is acknowledge the receipt of the RTC Wright Fall 2018 Service Change Concepts.
Good morning. All right, thanks. Good morning. I wanted to first say I appreciate your or your intention to leave the Route 2 from York to Rock.
Could you state your name for the record, please?
Oh, my name is Philip Cooney.
Okay.
I'm a rider of the fixed route, number 2 mainly. As I say, I wanted to give you my gratitude about leaving the Rock to York to 4th Street leg of the Route 2 intact. I got on the bus today with 2 other people at Rock and York. Some were headed to, both of the other ones were headed to work, and there were about 8 or 9 people on the bus. That's sort of a snapshot. Second, I would like to ask you to retain the 24-hour pass and the 10-ride pass. Both of those I use probably 10 to 12 of the 24s a year, and probably closer to 20 to 25 of the 10 rides per year. And those are the best economically for me. And then finally, I wanted to speak a little bit in regard to the access change. I know that you deleted that from the current agenda, but access, I don't currently use it. However, you never know when I'm going to have to use it, and evidently limiting the time of the access service to an area to the only the scheduled times of the fixed route would really be detrimental to some of the people with disabilities such as myself that use that service, especially when they're trying to get places either from their work or from scheduled appointments and that sort of thing. So that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooney. Here comes some help for you. Anybody else in the audience wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission. Consent items. Anybody want to pull one? Looking for a motion?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as is.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to number 4, 4.1 RTC Executive Report. Lee?
Mr. Chairman, let me first start with a reminder to everyone that our April 20th meeting is going to be our retreat meeting. So that means a potentially half-day exercise process where each of the directors will come forward with a overall update, review, and description of their programs, a discussion of the policy challenges each program is going to be bringing forward for the next fiscal year, along with a discussion with the board about budget priorities. Again, no action will be taken, but this will be enough information for staff to bring back an action item at the next meeting when we bring forward the budget for approval as required by state law. The item the gentleman just spoke on, item 3.5, Mr. Jickling will be providing more in-depth information about those service changes and some of the new projects and programs we'll be starting. So we'll be so dressed comfortably and we'll be prepared for a our annual hands-on discussion of what we're going to be doing for the next year. The second thing I want to focus on is we're going to be having free rides on all RTC transit services on April 22nd. That's a celebration of Earth Day. And this will provide us an opportunity for the public to try and ride transit, go green, and experience our fixed route system. RTC has also delivered, we've taken delivery of 4 new Proterra electric buses. I just signed the titles or the DMV forms yesterday to get the titles in our name and get driver's license, get license plates on those things. And you have another picture? Okay. And then while those are circulating, is Randy Rice? Randy, you out there? Okay, Randy, come up to the podium. I'm gonna put you on the spot. I'm not supposed to do this in my report, but I don't know, somebody won an award around here for something. I don't know, what was it? What was that award?
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name's Randy Rice. I'm the current president-elect of American Society of Civil Engineers Truckee Meadows branch. Today, I'd like to award somebody who won an award, and we do this every year, and we have a big celebration, but we thought we'd present it to you all today to recognize that person, and that person is Mr. Scott Gibson. Scott's collaborative and open approach with the public and partnering agencies have been the backbone of his success. His responsiveness and partnership demonstrate an openness and transparency that builds public trust. Scott has a philosophy of creating projects that meet the objectives of sound engineering and building neighborhoods, resulting in quality transportation projects that benefit our community. It's my pleasure to present the American Society of Civil Engineers Truckee Meadows Branch 2018 Engineer of the Year Award to Mr. Scott Gibson.
Yay. Come on, Scott, you got to say a few words there. Nice try.
Well, again, I'm deeply honored and deeply appreciate this recognition for the work we do, because this is, again, a team effort. And again, I always say it's a good thing I love my job, because the people I get to work with and the teams I get to work with and projects like Pyramid McCarran that I get to be involved in, it's just, I'm very fortunate. And again, thanks for to ASCE for this recognition.
Good stuff, Scott. You want to come down and have a picture taken with him?
Should we stand up?
You want us in the picture?
I mean, we are a sweet backdrop.
Oh, my God. Speak for yourself. Heck, yeah.
Put the,
Right here, one on each side.
Yeah, come on over.
Come on over here. Here, actually, Ryan, you go here.
Get in here.
Anthony, you go there.
All
Can
right.
you see him? Can you see him? Yeah. Good.
There? Awesome.
Hey, Scott, are these future engineers or future politicians?
We don't know. They should go the engineer route.
Scott, did you design those seats on the
Are they gonna paint the
bus?
buses?
huh?
Are they gonna paint these buses?
We're doing?
What's the name of the lady that does that?
Are you sure?
Nancy, but she's on vacation.
You picked out the fabric, I bet.
Hey, Mr. Gibson?
And that's all for my report.
Okay, no action required on that. We'll go to the federal report. Lee?
Oh, yeah, one more. There you go.
Now, who's
that?
this?
Who's that? Who's that? Oh, oh, your better half.
Luckily, it looks like his mom.
She found Bob.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Olivia.
Yes. Thank you very much for pointing out that I did add to my family about 6 weeks ago, a little baby girl. My wife and I welcomed little Olivia Grace to our household, and she's been keeping me up every night since, but she has been an absolute wonderful gift to my family. So if I'm a little bit off my game, it's because she keeps me up. But other than that, she's been amazing. And so thank you very much for the support. And yeah, we love her very much.
Good, congratulations.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, Mr. Lee, 4.2.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the next item is the federal report. All of you have at your position a copy of our federal priorities. This is a summary document of the priorities you approved last month. And we have been meeting with our congressional delegation. Ron and I met with Mr. Amodei yesterday. We are pushing forward with our priorities, including the Virginia Street Rapid Transit Extension Project, which is up for capital investment grant funding, and we're pushing the FTA very hard on that. And of course, we'll be working with the NDOT to push the Spaghetti Bowl improvements, which I understand are rapidly moving along, and we may be able to strip out an early action project and get that east to south movement fix underway. And I think, Bill, I'll put you on the spot while you're here. That'd be great if you guys could bring some information to the workshop on that so we can kind of get filled in on where you're at. The other thing I want to mention is I had the opportunity yesterday to meet with the Secretary of Transportation, Elaine Chao, at an event in Carson City. You may have seen some news reports. We did very well in Northern Nevada. They got a $7.5 million grant for their complete street extension of Main Street south of the Capitol. The Paiute tribe, I believe, got Pyramid Paiutes got $1.5 million for transit improvements on the reservation and for their service. And then I believe Carson got additional funding for replacement buses. Now, while we didn't get those funds directly, those are projects that support our region. If we had, and those are projects that when we look at, the total super region, if you will, we did very, very well compared to Southern Nevada. And I think that's symptomatic of our ability to leverage the new administration policies with respect to putting in substantial local resources. But I think more importantly, we are an urban area and we are a economy that actively interacts with our rural areas and supports the integration of agricultural, manufacturing, and distribution activities that are on our rural areas, and that, based on the conversations with the Secretary, are big policy priorities for them. I expect us to continue to do well as we move forward with projects, especially like the I-80 and the Spaghetti Bowl improvements. So I think it's a harbinger of things to come for us as we work with this administration to move projects forward. The capital investment grant program, they are fully funded in the new bill that's out there. A lot of things are funded in that new bill, including research and development activities. We have met with the FTA in partnership with UNR, and I think that's going to open up some opportunities for us to continue to look at both expanding the use of electrical propulsion systems for mass transit, as well as bringing autonomous technologies to our system for improvements to safety. We're not going to replace bus drivers by any stretch of the imagination, but we'll be able to give operators and mechanics more information to help them deal with safety issues. So I'm actually very positive with respect to where we're going to go with our federal partners. We need to remember federal revenue is about 38% of our total budget, give or take a few percentage points depending on how we do each year. So while we are clearly leveraging more local funds to our projects than federal funds, it's still not an insignificant source of revenue. The other thing the Secretary said yesterday that I thought was excellent was they're not going to impose federal policy priorities on us. They're going to want to really make sure more that we are engaging and achieving our own locally adopted policies. So that's something I thought was refreshing to see, that they're going to delegate down to local government the establishment of the priorities. I'm trying to think if there's anything I've left out. Our lobbying team will be here for the retreat. We'll be spending a considerable amount of time. So with the adoption of our priorities, we will be walking through some of our, discussing at our retreat, some of the tactical actions we'll be planning for the next fiscal year with respect to Tiger grants, infra grants, the capital investment grant program with FTA, the bus and bus discretionary program, as well as a research program that the FTA has, and how we'll be partnering with our other local government partners, with some of our key private sector partners, as well as the NDOT, and pushing those programs and projects forward. With that, Mr. Chairman, that wraps up my federal report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Hartung.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gibson, recently at a NACO meeting, a representative from a sister county, specifically Story County, was talking about the V&T Railroad and the fact that it is consistently losing money for them. They are currently talking to Washington, D.C. about funding the V&T, and my suggestion to them was, instead of funding the V&T, why don't we fund some transit between the Tri-Center and Washoe County? If we want to have conversations about funding any kind of a rail system, let's have that conversation. And so perhaps we can reach out to the commissioners at Story County, or in Story County rather, and just, you know, have this conversation so we're all on the same page. If we're going to spend federal dollars, boy, I'd rather see them spent between the Tri-Center and Washoe County rather than you know, Virginia City and Carson City to haul tourists up and down the mountain.
And we can do that. We have actually talked with the Story County folks about developing a plan for commuter bus service similar to what we operate to Carson City. And I think one of the things one of the balls that's in their court right now is, so what we learned in our discussions with Tesla and some of the others is they don't want public transit coming up to their front doors. What they would rather do is have a multimodal center somewhere in the center of the Tri-Center, and we would deposit, if we operated a service, we would deposit people at that multimodal center, then shuttles owned by the employers would come and pick people up and take them to the front doors. You know, I've often said, one of the reasons folks locate their businesses in the Tri-Center is not so much the cheap land cost, it is the privacy that they're able to obtain by being able to buy the vast amounts of lands and fundamentally have a secure private environment for their research and development activities. So
Yeah, and-
I think talking with Story County, we'll want to see where they're progressing in constructing such a facility. We have talked to Tesla, Proterra, ourselves, and Story County also about getting some vehicles and being able to operate that kind of service. So I think that's probably something that's on the 2 to 3 year time frame when we look at building a multimodal center, getting everybody to enter into an arrangement. I believe there's discussions now about a transportation management agency being formed out there. So when they get those ducks in a row, then we'll be able to come in and say, okay, now we can have our partnership and move forward. So.
And look, and I don't care what they do with the people once we get them out there. That's of no consequence to me personally. I'm not looking to, you know, take them to the front door and spoon feed them. That's not it at all. The scenario really more lies with the fact that Story County is having discussions on a rail system and wants federal dollars to fund a rail system from Virginia City to Carson City, and I think those dollars would be better spent and more wisely spent, and our efforts would be better placed by going directly to Washington, D.C. and asking them to participate, even if it were to come up with an agreement with using the rail line at a certain time of the day where they give us an hour a day where we can move people out there. And whether it works in your schedule or not, you know, we're running a train out, let's say in the morning at 7:30 in the morning, and then we run another one back at 4:30 in the afternoon or something of that nature. And that's really more where the request is placed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay, we'll move on to the NDOT report. Bill, filling in for Rudy. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Board members, the committee's getting a lot better looking considering the two sitting at the end there.
They're over there.
Just kidding. Anyway, happy to have those guys on the, that's pretty cool. That's good to have them up here.
City of Reno.
Okay, I was going to ask which district they were representing, so.
City of Reno.
All right. Well, thanks, you guys. That's cool that you're sitting up there. Take some courage. Nice work. Okay, so a few things from a federal standpoint that Rudy Malfabon wanted me to bring up. So to just tag on a little bit to Commissioner Hartung's discussion. So there's an additional $10 billion in the infrastructure spending plan that was just passed as part of the omnibus spending plan. Three areas that I think is very notable to point out. Of those areas within the $10 billion infrastructure package, $1.5 billion will go for Tiger discretionary grants. That's 3 times higher than previous years. So that's great for competitive grants, and you know, some of the other projects that we're trying to get in that we don't have funding for would be a great opportunity. $1.942 billion for Amtrak. So if we're looking at passenger rail, and depending on how that goes, are we trying to get people from San Francisco all the way to Reno and the Tri-Center? There's a lot of discussions that need to be held around that. And then there's $863 million for rail grant programs. So the bill has a lot of opportunity for rail, and I know that NDOT and its stakeholders are very interested in looking at rail and seeing how rail can improve both passenger and freight traffic to Reno from the Bay Area, and then on to see how we can use that for the Tri-Center. For the most part, Lee covered most of the main parts of the federal omnibus appropriations package. Also on the national front, I would like to spotlight April 11th is National Work Zone Safety Awareness Week. So like to spotlight the importance of workers, you know, out on our roadways. That's their living, that's their office. I would like to promote the fact that they're out there working, trying to improve the roadways for us. So if we could look out for them, that would be great. On a Northern Nevada project standpoint, I have an update here actually on planning programs. So the regional transit study, which encompasses 5 counties, it's a review of transit needs between Washoe, Carson, Lyons, Story, and Churchill. The study will kick off in mid-April. It's a stakeholder meeting with key staff from counties mentioned. The counties that are mentioned will take place to establish expectations and involvement. On the UPWP, or Unified Planning Work Program, agreements will be out soon to RTC staff for review. It's expected that the agreements will be executed by May for work associated with the plans to begin on July 1st. This happens, this is an annual occurrence. I-11, we've held a number of public meetings on the Northern Nevada alternatives analysis. So we've held public meetings. Let's see, we've gone all the way up the 95 corridor. So we've held several of those meetings so far. Moving up from Southern Nevada, we've finished meetings in Carson City, and then in June we will propose, we'll have those folks come back, and then we'll finish that up finish the public meeting and alternative analysis. So the purpose of the study is to evaluate potential corridors for the future I-11 between northwestern Las Vegas and I-80. The series of meetings presented study goals as well as some methodology. So we'll hold a series of meetings in mid to late June to present results of the alternatives analysis. I know that several members of Northern Nevada, both Reno, City of Sparks, Washoe County staff, I know that we've reached out on I-11 individually, and we've had meetings with you all. So thank you for your input on that. The One Nevada plan is moving along, so that's our long-range 20-year plan. We are currently working on methodologies for better prioritizing projects based on performance goals. Also, we are looking at developing a critical corridor section to better address how we are responding to statewide needs and national goals. So that's on the planning front. Projects-wise, the Reno Spaghetti Bowl, NEPA is still on track to meet our 3.5-year EIS schedule. The administrative draft of the EIS will be sent to agencies in September and ready for public review in November through December of this year. And a public hearing will be scheduled for early 2019. As Lee mentioned, we do have an early action project that was part of the Spaghetti Bowl, but we've found that it has independent utility. We've also met with Federal Highway Administration, and they agree. So we are in the early stages of moving forward with a project that will help fix the issues that you see on I-80 eastbound to southbound 580. And so that's exciting news. We have a very good relationship with Federal Highway Administration. We work very closely together. So the fact that, that we're working together to try to get this early project out is very good, quite honestly, just from a coordination standpoint. So this will help with a safety standpoint. So the 2 to 3 crashes that we have every day on that portion, eastbound 80 to southbound 580, that will help with that. There will be some widening southbound on 580, which will then help the North Valleys projects, that we won't be sending everyone into a parking lot. So in terms of schedule and how the projects are lining up, it's looking very, very good right now. So, and the early action project, we're hoping to actually start working on before, within the next year, within the next 12 months. So hopefully we might have something out within the next 18 months, hopefully, if not sooner than that. So making a lot of progress on the Reno Spaghetti Bowl. I-80 Vista to USA Parkway feasibility study. So the effort was awarded to CA Group very recently. And we're looking forward to trying to figure out what is really needed for Northern Nevada with the Tri-Center, with North Valleys, everything out on Pyramid Highway. There's been discussions about La Posada. How do we fund that? All of these things will be included in this feasibility study. We want to look at all of those options that people have talked about, cross those off, throw them away, so that we can start focusing on the real solutions that we think all has a chance of moving forward and helping this community. We know how the travel is out to the Tri-Center and back. So we're committed, definitely committed, working with the RTC and local agencies, try to figure out how to move people out to the Tri-Center and back as efficiently and safely as possible. So we look forward to working with Lee and the RTC staff on this. Let's see. I've taken up a lot of time here. 395, one last project I would like to talk about. So the restriping and pavement preservation work that we're doing between 395 and the Spaghetti Bowl. The bids came in on March 8th. We are going to go out and start construction on that portion of 580, actually 395, between those 2 points, between McCarran and the Spaghetti Bowl. And we hope to start that work very soon, actually. So Anyway, those are my project updates, and I'd be more than welcome to
Thank you,
answer any
Bill.
questions.
Questions or comments, Mr. Lucy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill, a couple questions I have for you. Obviously, first and foremost, we'll start off nice, and then we'll get to the bad stuff. I want to commend NDOT and with all the work that you guys have done on I-580 South and with the aesthetic projects, especially in the South Valley, starting from the South Meadows Parkway all the way up to DeMonte Ranch, and also the South Virginia edit. Those projects are looking nice. They are adding so much to the area aesthetically, and obviously, you guys chose local contractors to do that, and so the money's staying here. It's helping the economy, and it's actually helping really beautify the area. So that is a nice addition, and I want to thank you for all the work that NDOT's done on those projects. But the one thing that keeps challenging me is that, we can have beautiful and friendly on and off ramps for people to look at, because they're going to be sitting there for extended periods of time when the traffic backs up. And as we've seen, and it's become more of a relevant conversation with everybody I talk to here and around the community, is that we've seen a massive increase in traffic because of the growth. Nothing that's a mystery to any of us. But one of the exits that I have a problem with, Bill, is exit 61. This is the exit that I've talked to you and Rudy multiple times about. On I-580 northbound from Carson City, we have a great thoroughfare, and as we continue to grow, the county grows, the cities are growing. We are constantly adding industry here, and Lee brought it up in his executive director's report and the federal report. Reno and Sparks serve as hubs for Western Nevada and for Northern Nevada in regards to agriculture, manufacturing, industry, and commercial businesses. But a majority of the people that there's a majority of people live here, but there are a good contingent of individuals that live in the Carson City, Lyon County, Dayton area, and so when we bring those individuals in, they're getting off at for example, in my district down in Double Diamond, DeMonte Ranch, going to IGT, a number of the different tech companies that are moving and manufacturing companies are moving into that industrial area. You have at exit 61 a hard stop onto South Virginia. Very few that I know of interstates go to a hard stop on an off-ramp, and that continuously gets backed up. So I want to see what NDOT has in plan for, solving that problem. Obviously, there are some challenges with surrounding properties there. So I just kind of like a report back from you guys, because I can't see of any clear solution, because you can't really acquire land either to the north or south of that exit. Is there, are we talking about closing that exit, and would closing that exit be a plan, or what's the plan to rectify that? And the same issue is at exit 53 onto State Route 431 or Mount Rose Highway. Northbound I-580 comes off exit 53 to also a hard stop exit. And like I said, as the county continues to grow, and as we see development and things move into our southern valleys, as we've seen in Spanish Springs and La Posada area, and as we've seen in the North Valleys, we have these challenges on I-580 and also I-80 that these interchanges and these intersections on and off to continue to make traffic flow fluidly, we need to have better on and off ramps, and to have hard stop exits. I don't know if those were engineered properly for the amount of growth that we're seeing and what we're going to see into the future. So I'd kind of like to have those discussions with NDOT as we move forward. What are we going to do to anticipate that growth and get ahead of these exits? Because I know when I travel in, I got caught in traffic coming from Carson City. There was probably 30 cars backed up on I-580 getting off on Mount Rose Highway a couple weeks ago, and then I drove past a plethora of cars, and on the exit 61, it was backed all the way up to the freeway, which is, and that's a long off ramp, and it's getting to the point where it's going to start causing problems on the freeway for the on ramp at South Meadows Parkway. So just some things I'd like to address with NDOT and for future understanding. So thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, Bill, you want to respond?
If I could, yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner Lucy. You are right. A lot of the freeways and interchanges and ramps were designed back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s throughout northern Nevada, and we're trying to, with the growth that we currently have, we're trying to go in and fix that. The Reno Spaghetti Bowl project is a perfect example of that. So all of those access points that are stacked together, those ramps that don't quite work anymore for the 60s and 70s of the 1900s. So we're trying to address all of those ramp issues from a prioritized standpoint. So the first ramp or first series of movements we want to fix are eastbound to southbound, I-80 to 580. And we've talked about that. We're working on that. We got that going. We're working on North Valley's projects because that's constricted as heck, trying to come out in the morning. So we're working on that. We're working on those ramps. I actually looked into exit 61, and what happens there is if anyone sees brake lights heading northbound, they dive off to try to hit Virginia Street, because that's what's happening. And it's usually late afternoon where they're doing that. They'll see a series of brake lights. They think the freeway's coming to a stop. It's not. It's just slowing down, but people are jumping off. What I would recommend is working with Lee Gibson. Isn't that your road down there? That's your road down there. I mean, our ramp works. Okay. We've relinquished something to you, Lee. So what I would recommend.
Down there. From
City
Reno.
of Reno.
I have a
Reno,
very
guys.
simple fix, though. The arterial stoplights on either side act as ramp meters for that. So if there's anything we could do that is within MUTCD and national design standards to adjust the signals, we might be able to do something to clear the traffic faster. We can also look at the hard stop situation, and can we get a free right out, at least get them out? So there's a lot of options. I completely hear you, and I agree with you, and we'll work with RTC and local agencies to try to help improve those situations.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Harton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hoffman, has there been a fiscal analysis done on the cost of widening I-80 East out to, let's just say, even the Tri-Center versus, trying to do a light rail or an Amtrak run to get those people in and out? Because it may be, and I don't know, do we have 2 or 3 sets of tracks out there, Mr. Gibson? Is there a set for what is it, Union Pacific? There's three sets?
I believe there are 2 sets out there. We looked at this issue a while back at a 30,000-foot level, and
Let's get it down to a 10,000.
it's about a, do y'all recall, David or Amy?
$1 billion.
How much?
It was $1 billion rail.
Yeah, it was a $1 billion rail project, and that was without right-of-way acquisition.
How, so wait a minute, I'm confused. If we use existing track and we cut a deal with them to use that track during a certain time of the day, so we're not building a track, so we're not building the line.
David? We-
And again, I'd just like to see the fiscal analysis and maybe.
Well, I think
maybe-
part of what your
and-
studies-
Mr. Gibson,
Yeah.
and maybe it is that it's cheaper to do that than widen I-80, because that's just a choke point. That's all it is. And we're really only dealing with out to Fernley. Once you get out, and not even to Fernley, once you get out past the Tri-Center, I-80 flows fairly smoothly, and it's a very high service level for an interstate route.
Right.
Gentlemen, welcome.
We actually performed also a ridership analysis. We set up a number of stations. I think we had one near McCarran, West McCarran and I-80, 4th Street.
Yeah, we looked at all
And
the
then
way.
Keystone.
Truckee.
Yeah, Truckee.
Karen, so
And
it's
I don't remember what the ridership levels were. They were pretty
Not much.
low.
Yeah.
We were looking at, was it $150 a trip?
I think the model showed about 1,000 riders from the, if we just did Reno.
Mark, introduce yourself. And
Hi,
just,
Mark Maloney, Transit Operations Manager, and I think we did this in October meeting.
Yeah.
We brought it, and the model showed about 1,000 trips if we went from Reno, Sparks, then into the Tri-Center. And the problem we had that kind of hit the first roadblock is when we talked to Union Pacific, they said no. They have no interest in us renting or having time on their space. Or
How does
anything.
Amtrak have time on their line?
Amtrak has an agreement with them. So that would be one avenue to go towards, is if you could work with Amtrak and see if they can provide a service that met the commuter rail for us or something along those lines. But that'd be kind of a next level of negotiation.
and to interject, though, I think Amtrak's issue would be equipment.
Yes.
and who's going to purchase the equipment.
Where it's going to be stored.
And
where it's
then
gonna be
you would
repaired.
enter into an agreement with Amtrak, but that's only contingent on whether or not Amtrak has operating windows available from UP between Truckee and Tri-Center, Fernley, et cetera.
Correct.
So,
I guess what I'm really asking, though, is if we do a financial analysis between widening I-80, what's the cost of widening I-80 so that we reduce that choke point versus adding, coming up with some kind of an agreement? And of course, they're going to say no on the front side. And there's ways to, negotiate with them. I recognize that the railroad has, these sovereign rights going back into the 1860s. They're like a tribal entity. And you can't tell them what to do and when to do it, but these are special times, and these are special circumstances, and if we're going to spend huge amounts of money just widening I-80, to get out to Tri-Center, I think that there's some real opportunities here to just at least start having the conversations, and we need to bring Tri-Center to the freaking table. Where are they? They never show up at any of these things. I'm sorry, I'm a little testy about that, because we're the ones on the hook for solving the problem. They just continue to build. What a gig. Where do I sign up? Where do I buy stock in that? Right? And I'm real serious about this. And then, so I'll get off my soapbox. I'll climb down. Now I'm only 6'2". NDOT's talking about La Posada, fixing La Posada.
If I could, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
Sure.
Yeah, expound on that.
Well, I'll step back. So we have run some very high-level estimates on adding a lane out and a lane back
On
to
La
the
Posada?
Tri-Center. No, I was going to step back.
Oh, I'm
to the
sorry.
beginning.
I beg your pardon. Thank you.
Well, but we will. What I wanted to say was we will run a comparison of rail versus, we're...
just like to see that.
Well, we're doing a feasibility study on all options and trying to get rid of those that don't make sense. So I'm positive that we would do a rail versus, how much would rail cost, how much would lanes, how much would La Posada? So we're going to look at that. Even though NDOT firmly believes that's a regional road, we are supportive and understand that this would help this area. It would act as an outer ring road and help connect the North Valleys to the Pyramid Highway, and then take it out to dump it right into Patrick Interchange out there. We think that's a good idea. There are a lot of really good ideas, and that's the whole point to the feasibility study, is we have to figure out what are those great ideas and how much are they going to cost?
So-
And how
so-
long will it take to build them, really?
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's obviously the question. How long will it take to build it? How long will it
Absolutely.
take to
So
get
with
through
the
the
environmental
process?
process,
Versus
finding the funding?
trying to get, time on the rail line and work it backwards that way. And again, maybe we need to just go higher, up the ladder and have a conversation with the feds about how do we solve this problem. And look, and I respect what the Tri-Center is doing, but we're the ones who have had to respond to this, not them. It bothers me intensely. I think it bothers Washoe County residents intensely. Because we're the ones on the hook for building more houses, and I understand this, but we all know that residential after 5 to 7 years doesn't pay for itself. And so there's a lot of impacts to our area that we're having to deal with, transit and transportation being two of them. And so it's one of those things where, we really need to get them to come to the table, and we need to get our federal partners to come to the table, because this is a wider issue. So talk to me about La Posada.
Mr. Chairman? Sure. If I may? Well, it's a concept at this point.
And you're widening it, how far? You're taking it all the way to the Tri-Center?
These are just discussions among, I think there was a white paper written at one time on La Posada.
Okay.
And we just want to investigate the feasibility of that road and help all the other agencies figure out if that's the right thing to do, just from a regional transportation standpoint.
Would it include up and over the hill all the way to essentially the North Valleys, so it would include not just La Posada, it would include Eagle Canyon and then through
There've been
essentially tribal
discussions
land?
of it going that far, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So we just want to know if that's a feasible, how much will it cost, you know, what are all those questions? And then there's that option, and then there's rail, and then there's lanes to Tri-Center, and then there's, you know, how do people commute within the valley? A lot of them come down 80 and go through the Spaghetti Bowl.
Yes.
That would take a lot of traffic off of this, you know, there's just a lot of conversation that could be held around those future solutions that will best help this community take that next step through this massive growth period.
Well, I'm interested to see how you would accommodate Eagle Canyon, because I can't get Eagle Canyon widened to 4 lanes, let alone handle the volume of traffic that would come all the way across the hill. So I mean, and this would impact Spanish Springs dramatically, certainly probably long past the time that my tenure would be served here. But I would love to hear these conversations deeper and how it's going to all fit together, because I'm still a little cloudy.
Well, we'll definitely keep you in the loop on the conversations, for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lucy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, and Mr. Hoffman, one comment you made kind of struck me a little weird. You know, you believe that obviously those are regional roads and regional projects up north, you know, the La Posada and the different ideas. But to Commissioner Hartung's discussion, the governor and GOED were the big ones who landed and gave the tax breaks to Tesla, and really what created the nexus of the Tri-Center. And so it really wasn't the doing of Washoe County, it wasn't the doing of City of Sparks, it wasn't the doing of City of Reno, but we're bearing the pain of this growth. And we're not getting the tax breaks that we're given, and the issues, so I would contend that this is a state issue. These are state roads, and these are state issues that need to be addressed by state agencies such as NDOT. So absolutely, and I understand that you guys have been a very viable participant, but I would say that you guys should continue to be a participant in helping us find a solution, because and we've talked about Southeast Connector, hopefully with the opening of Southeast Connector, that will relieve a lot of the stress off of the southern portion of 580 up to the Spaghetti Bowl. But until we relieve that pressure out of the North Valleys and out of Sparks, it's going to continue to get worse on I-80, and it's going to continue to get worse on our residents, and it's going to make challenges at city council meetings, it's going to make challenges at county commission meetings, and challenges right here at the RTC Washoe when these individuals come in and say, I can't even get around my own community. So I would contend that this is absolutely a state issue. This is not, I mean, when the governor talks about putting these things and giving these tax breaks, and we have special session to cut tax breaks for these individuals, it becomes a state issue, not a regional issue anymore. And so I would absolutely contend that is the case, and would hope that NDOT continues to be at the table.
Okay, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Well, I agree with you. I do. I agree that through state negotiations to improve the economy of Northern Nevada, the governor played a huge role in that, in bringing a lot of corporations to Northern Nevada. We put in, NDOT has been under a ton of pressure to get USA Parkway done in record time, in working with all the permittees out there, trying to get signals and permits. Well, I know it. I've personally been out to Tesla several times, and it's stressful and it's challenging. So I agree that the state has to step up and try to help with this growth, but I disagree in the fact that it's all of our issue. I think all the agencies, federal, state, and local, need to work very closely together to understand what the issues are, who's paying for what, who's doing what. We need to work together to get to the next step. That's all.
You know, and that's part of the reason why we have NDOT here so we can kick this around and beat you up a little bit.
you around.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman, just, I'd like to point out for the record for Mr. Hartung's response to one of his parts of his questions. We will be doing the Eagle Canyon study here at RTC as part of our planning program, so
Thank you for that, Mr. Gibson. But if we turn that into an arterial versus a collector, which is what it is currently, it's just a collector, If you turn that into an arterial, it completely changes the nature of that road, and it runs past a high school and a middle school. I don't know how you do that and move any amount of traffic with a 15-mile-an-hour zone twice a day. It presents some real challenges to try to get it up over that hill and move any amount of volume through that corridor. So it's that, I'm just saying, when you connect those two pieces, when you start connecting the North Valleys all the way over, and people use it for a connection point from the North Valleys out to the Tri-Center, I think the alignment would just have to be revisited, and maybe you push it farther north in out through Palomino, where there is some vacant land, and there wouldn't be as many challenges to try to work around existing infrastructure and existing residents and schools and et cetera. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Thank you, Bill. Move on to engineering, 5.1, acknowledge receipt of the 4th Street Prater Way monthly progress report. Come on down.
Good morning, I'm Jeff Wilbrecht, project manager for the 4th and Prater BRT project. So I'm going to give you the March update since we missed that meeting, and I'll kind of talk about what's happened in February and in March, and kind of then what's happening into April. So as of the March 16th plan meeting that got rescheduled to today, we were about 72% of the way through the project. Today we're about 74-ish% through the project. As you all know, March, we had a lot of rain in March, so that actually did kind of impact our project. We ended up having 6 weather days in the month of March. Our budget's still on track. There's been no change orders to change the amount of the budget. To today, the contractors actually billed about $25 million as of the last progress payment. And kind of getting into the work that's happened over the past couple months, there's been a lot of utility work. So in Reno, there's a lot of storm drain work going on. That's really progressing well. There's only a little bit left in the Evans Avenue to essentially Wells Avenue section of the project, this far west end. And then the Tumwa work, the reimbursable work that Tumwa's done, that's about done. They're just kind of checking off last minute items. Dry utility work, again, we're doing a lot of work for the dry utility companies to relocate the overhead power poles. I'll start with Sparks. So Sparks is pretty much done with the utility relocation work. All the tie-overs have been pretty much completed, and right now they're in their rec out process. So they're removing all their components from the poles as they progress. So they should be done actually by the middle of April this month. And then in Reno, we're really, all the dry utility work is pretty much done in Reno from Galletti all the way up to Sutro. There's a couple last minute items going from Sutro to Wells, and then there's work currently going on from Wells to Evans right now for dry utility work on the north side of the road. And that's all going on pretty well right now. So kind of the civil improvements, if you drive through Sparks, all the curb gutter sidewalk is pretty much done. We're getting ready to start doing some paving work. I'll talk about that in a minute. In Reno, all the south side of the curb gutter sidewalk is completed. The lights are working on the south side of the road in Reno now, from Galletti all the way up to Wells. And now we're doing work on the north side from Galletti to Wells. We just placed just over 2,000 linear feet of curb and gutter in this last week with these warm temperatures. I think it's between essentially Ticino and Line Drive, kind of in that middle section of Reno. We're going to continue to progress westward. And then the BRT stops, those are really starting to take shape. We're getting a lot of the foundations and the underground components of those put together. The mock-up station, which is at the kind of by the Dairy Queen at 15th Street, that should be pretty much all put together by the end of May. They're going to start putting all the glass work on it and do all the mock-up type elements. That'll look really nice. And so now, kind of coming into April, there's a lot of paving work that's starting up in Sparks. And so we're doing the side street paving right now at 18th Street and Cobble and 20th Street. And that's all in preparation to do the mainline paving in Sparks. And so mainline paving is going to be from 18th Street to El Rancho Drive. And that's going to actually be happening starting in the middle of this month. And we're going to kind of follow the same process that we did for this paving in the eastern part of Sparks, where we had one-way traffic, and it worked really, really well and is really efficient. And then after that, we're going to get into El Rancho intersection. We're going to have to do all the work there and kind of continue to progress westward. So it's going to be a kind of a train of paving westward into the project. It's all going to start wrapping up and starting to look complete. So Sparks will look pretty much done by the end of May. It'll be pretty nice, and then we'll be working mostly in Reno at that time. And with that kind of quick summary, I'll happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments?
Chairman.
Mr. Lucy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Walbrecht, I have a quick question. When is when are we going to see the completion of the off-ramp, or I guess on the section on the underpass of I-80 right there at the off-ramp by Coney Island, between Coney Island and the
Karen Auto Body there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that work is the north side work. They have the curb line in on the north side. In the middle of May, we're going to kind of reduce that down so that we can do the center median work. NDOT is having us do a lot of center median stuff to kind of help delineate left turn lanes for the on and off ramps in that area. After that, we're going to get into a period where we're going to end up closing down the interchange of Prater Way, not the I-80 part, but Prater Way, to really accelerate and get that work done as quickly as possible. So that part of the work is going to start first part of June, and it's going to be a 2-week period, and we're going to just
You're
bust
going to
it all
shut
out.
down that interchange?
We're
I
going
mean,
to shut down
the off-ramps?
We're going to
at Prater Way?
close. Yeah, we're going to close Prater Way. We're not going to close any part of the.
Because I mean, a good portion of traffic coming from the transfer station to the landfill go offloads right there.
Correct.
And so they're not going to be able to offload there, is what you're telling me?
Yeah, they're going to get detoured. There's Galletti to Kitsky is actually a really convenient detour
So
for
they're
that
going to go all the
intersection.
way to Wells now?
They will probably go to Wells, yes.
And so you're going to make an intersection that's already bad worse?
Not intentionally, but
Okay, just questions,
there's
you know, public meetings.
There's Rock Boulevard is a good alternative for them because they're going out to Lockwood. So
Okay, well, what I would advise us to do, if we're going to be doing something of that nature, or Spanish Springs Construction, is that they reach out to Waste Management and try to advise some sort of route plan for their drivers for their 18-wheeler trucks, because that would be major impact, not only to the Wells off-ramp, but it would have major impact to this interchange down here and a majority of our streets. Also, for our rapid transit that goes through here,
Absolutely.
that's going to cause some major problems. So I would start looking at some kind of a plan for that period of time that you're going to shut that interchange down, because it already is it's a kind of a choke point right now, because it's just a stop sign, that 4-way stop sign, since the lights are down. But I would address that sooner rather than later.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chuck, for me, I know it seems like this project's been going on forever and ever, but the finished product is looking really good.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Any other questions or comments? Looking for a motion to accept the report?
So moved.
We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you.
Okay, 5.2, approve the indexing of the regional road impact fees as allowed by NRS 278B.225. Julie, welcome.
Thank you. For the record, Julie Masterpool, Engineering and RIF Program Manager. This item is for the indexing of the regional road impact fees. NRS statute allows an annual update of an automatic inflationary adjustment to the impact fee program. It's based on a 5-year rolling average of the Consumer Price Index. This year's adjustment will be a 1.86% increase, which is about a $5 per VMT increase in the fees. That translates to about $80 increase for a single-family home. So that adjustment, we are planning to put that into effect July 1st. At the request of the local agencies, they wanted to start it at the beginning of the fiscal year. And this allows us to keep the fees current while we're working on the 6th edition update. So I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have
Okay.
any.
Thanks, Julie. Questions or comments? Mr. Hartung.
Thank you. So we're allowed to go up a certain percentage. Would we be better served? I mean, have we looked at how we're rating in terms of VMT, Julie, and revisit our VMTs?
We are doing that as part of the 6th edition update.
Okay.
That's a combination of looking at a new capital improvement plan, which is based on the 2040 RTP.
Yes.
And then we reevaluate what the number of new vehicle trips are over that same 10-year period. So we're going to have a new rate coming up for the 6th edition.
And the reason I say that is because let's just say the North Valleys. If we have people who work out in Trick, it blows these VMTs out of the water.
It does overall as far as the regional VMTs.
Yes.
But this is, for the impact fee program, it's restricted to just the regional roads. So it's the VMTs on the regional roads. So if you do jump on the freeway up at 395 and then take I-80 all the way out, it doesn't make as big of an impact to the impact fee program because we're just looking at what's the effect on the regional road.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I'd like to see us revisit those VMTs because I'm not convinced that these are the same numbers that I remember from years ago. You know, and I'm just not convinced that they're maybe they've gone down. I don't know.
It's a combination of, we base it on the consensus forecast. So we place the consensus forecast all over the region where the population and employment is, and then of course, we use our travel demand model to help us determine where those trips are. So we do
Understood.
look at that as far as the reevaluation of the sixth edition.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Looking for a motion to accept the report.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you.
6.1, Metropolitan Planning Organization acknowledged receipt of the presentation of 2015-16 Washington County Regional Travel Characteristics, and we've got Amy and Dr. Schwinn.
That's right. Shen Wang is our project manager and senior planner who has been working on this project. And the importance of this is we're using it to update our travel demand model to have more current information on things exactly like VMT and average trip lengths. This is a high-level overview of some of the highlights of this study. So as you're listening and you think of things you'd like additional analysis on for future meetings, we can certainly bring that back. And I did want to let you know that we are sharing this information or have already shared this data with TMRPA as they're using some elements for studies that they're conducting, and NDOT and RSTVA. And we're certainly willing to share this data with other agencies who are interested. So with that, I will hand it over to Shen Wang.
Thank you, Amy, for the introduction. Again, my name is Xuan Wang for the record. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and the board members. I'm glad to be here. I'm going to give a presentation about the 2015 to 2016 Washoe County Travel Characteristics Study. First, some background. This study is a major data collection effort to provide, to collect the information about how people travel in relation to their social demographic background. The primary reason for this study is to provide the data and support for the calibration of the regional travel demand model, which is an important tool for traffic forecasting and transportation planning. It's also required by federal regulations. Previously, a similar study was done in 2005 to 2006. With this study, we will be able to update the model with current data. Even though the study was designed for the need of the model development, with the data collected, we can also do other planning studies, such as the corridor studies and the transit analysis. This study includes 3 different surveys targeting different types of travelers. They are household travel survey, visitor survey, and transit survey, and I'm going to talk about each of these. So the first survey is a household travel survey. It focuses on residence travel in our region. So there are over 160,000 households in our region. So our goal was to survey at least 1% of these households. And among these 1% households, we would like to have 10% of these households use a GPS function to track their locations throughout the day. They could either wear a GPS logger or use a smartphone GPS application. So that way we could calculate for a factor to account for the underreported trips. And then we also had specific goals for the 20 districts in the modeling area and households in different segments. That way we don't survey only households in certain areas or households or high-income households. So the samples are distributed evenly, both geographically and demographically. We started the survey by sending out invitation postcards with information on how people could participate. And then participants submitted their data through a two-stage data collection process. And they used either the survey website or hotline phone calls or paper mail. Throughout the survey, we collected over 2,000 samples, with 225 of them being GPS samples, which exceeded our original goals. The survey resulted in 4 major data sets. The first one is the household data. There are 2,154 samples selected, recorded, and we asked the household to provide us data about their locations, how many people live in the household, how many number of workers, students, vehicles available, if the home is owned or rent, or a single family or multifamily, and also their income levels. For each person in the household, we asked about some personal data, such as age, gender, and sex, age, gender, and race, their employment and school status, their locations of their work, school, and the major grocery store. And also for each person, we asked about during the 24-hour travel day, all the places they visited. The places were also reported with the departure and the arrival times, mode used, and the trip purposes. Over 17,000 records were collected. If we connected the places based on the sequence they were visited, we can figure out a person's past during the day. And finally, we asked about some simple questions about their available vehicles. And this may be used for air quality analysis. So that was all the data we collected through the household travel survey. And the data were used for model calibration, but also with the data available, we're able to summarize the data and to learn a little more about how people travel in our region. For example, the household trips in our region is a little less than 1.5 million trips a day. On average, each house makes about 7.3 trips, and that's 3.4 trips per person. And on average, each trip takes about 15 minutes to travel 7 miles. And for commute trips, that's a little longer, 18 minutes for 10 miles. And on average, the vehicle occupancy is 1.7. This slide shows the mode share. So in our region, the mode used the most is still private vehicle, 86%, followed by non-motorized, 8%, and public transit is 3%. And 2% of the trips use the school bus, and private transit is 1%. We can also look at this data based on different demographic categories. For example, we can look at the household trips based on the household size, so how many people are in the household. So the more people are in the household, the more they travel.
There it is right there.
For the income, people with the households with higher income travel more. If there are households with more available vehicles travel more. And as for person trips, the age group that traveled the most is a group of 35 to 45. And the elderly people age 65 and more and older travel the least. Here are some data about the vehicles. The first chart shows the number of vehicles in different vehicle years. We can see a lot of vehicles are in 2004 to 2005. And then as for the body type, the highest category is the SUV, followed by sedan. For engine type, gasoline engine is still the highest percentage, and followed by diesel about 5%. Electric engine is still very minimal. We can also use the data to do origin and destination analysis because the data have location information. For example, this map shows home locations for people who work in downtown Reno. Similarly, we have one that shows a home location for people with jobs in the Sparks Industrial Center.
Right.
The other way around, we can look at for people who live in the North Valleys, where they traveled during the day. Since the data have time of day information, we can look at the time distribution of the travels. And we can see two obvious AM and PM peaks and a moderate midday peak during the lunch hour. So that was for the household travel survey. And now let's move on to the visitor survey. This survey looks at the people who have been in our region who had been in our region for at least 24 hours. That way they had 1 day of travel to report. And we used the tablet survey to do face-to-face interviews at various locations throughout the Reno and Sparks area. And these sites are mostly lodging sites. 421 samples were collected. During the survey interviews, we asked about questions in 3 major categories: the demographic information, the person's age, gender, household income, and their home location, and their visit characteristics, how long they planned to stay, why they were visiting, the size of their traveling party, and the characteristics, where they stayed, and how they traveled to Washoe County. And then we asked about the details of their stay, 1 day of stay in our region. So let's look at some of the data. So on average, the traveling party size is 2.5 persons. And the chart shows a percentage of visitors came here for different purposes. The most popular purpose is recreation, 44%, followed by business, 27%. A lot of visitors are from California, 43%, followed by Nevada, 7%, and then Texas, 6%. We ask about their income levels. The highest category is the 75,000 or more, 38%. And we also asked how much they planned to spend in Washoe County. And 29% said that they would spend less than $500. Auto and airplane are the most used mode to travel to the region, 51% by auto and 41% by airplane. Once they are in our region, these are modes that used to travel to their lodging site, and the auto is the majority, 84%. And for the activities during the 1 day of visit, the highest activity is for entertainment and cultural, about 38%, and followed by business-related, about 14%. Mode used to these activities, the highest is auto, 68%, and followed by non-motorized, walking and biking, 24%. So that was for the visitor survey. And the last survey is the transit survey. This survey has 2 subcomponents. The first one is on-to-off survey, and the second is onboard survey. The on-to-off board survey looks at where a person gets on the bus and where the same person gets off the bus to connect the boarding and lighting. The data were used to calculate weighting and expansion factors. The onboard survey was conducted through face-to-face interviews. The interviewer used a tablet to ask questions and put in answers, and also automatically code the geographic locations. We collected 1,209 usable samples. Similarly, onboard survey, we asked about the people's social demographic background and also the trip details about their transit trip. Here are some summaries of the data. For our riders, 75% of our riders are with a household income of less than $35,000. 23% of riders reported there's no worker in their household, and 37% reported there's one worker in their household. We also asked about available household vehicles. 54% of riders said they don't have vehicles in their whole household. And for the valid driver's license, 61% said that they didn't have a driver's license. Here's the age distribution of the riders. The highest category is for the 25 to 34, 20%. As for access mode to the bus, 96% of riders said that they walked or biked to the bus. 51% of people used at least one transfer. So that was a summary of the project. A lot of data and work had been done for this study. I wasn't able to cover everything. More information and data are available in the project final report, which can be downloaded from rtcwashoe.com under planning. That's for my presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Great report. I mean, you've covered everything on here. Questions, comments?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Lucy.
Mr. Chair, absolutely. I mean, the data in here is amazing. I think this is phenomenal. I mean, there's so much to be gained from just this small data collection we've done. My question really to you is in regards to the visitor survey, you know, and it's more of a comment. When we questioned the visitors, why weren't they choosing to use RTC Transit? I mean, do we ask why that modes of transit? I mean, obviously, the majority of them are using either rental cars or private shuttles, and I know a lot of our properties or Uber to do that. But even most of them would elect, there was a 6% that would elect to walk over 1% using RTC Transit. Why was that? Is there any data behind why or any? No? Okay. You know, and I guess my comment is that, you know, during my tenure, I've been able to travel quite a bit to different cities and different conferences. And when I'm in different cities, I try to utilize transit as much as I possibly can because it's highly functional. It gets me to the places I need to be. I'm usually in the downtown core where transit is beneficial. And it frustrates me as the chairman of the RSCVA that we're not trying to either push transit towards our visitors, or there's a diversion for our transit, because I think we have a wonderful bus service. I think our mass transit is amazing. But we're not seeing that. We're not seeing that ridership from visitors, and that's frustrating to me. And so I would ask, if we move forward with this data, if we can dive deeper into some of the, or if we need to jointly work with the RSCVA, because it would be a benefit to us as well, and for our properties. Why aren't they using transit? How can we better service individuals? You know, and maybe in conjunction with the RSCVA. You know, ask some of our convention visitors. We have some major citywides that are coming in that are going to utilize, you know, with Interbike and Safari Club. what do those individuals want to see in transit? Why aren't they using transit? Maybe if we can conduct some sort of study to help us gain some understanding back, that would be beneficial for me on a regional scale. So those are my only questions why we haven't, but maybe some data we can look into as we move forward.
I think that's a great point, something we can look into further. It also identifies an opportunity for us in our marketing strategy as we try to target our advertising perhaps more to visitors and how to use the system.
Well, and I think as we talk more about fixed, as we get into further discussions about what fixed routes are more beneficial or how that works, does routing affect ridership for visitors? And maybe a route specifically for visitors isn't conducive for everyday usage here. And could we expedite usage? Will that help? Will a joint task of identifying what those key problems are, because transit does play a key role in my convention space when it comes in here. How does that work? And can they coexist and have a symbiotic relationship? So just something I would ask that as we move down the road, Mr. Jickling, Ms. Cummings, that we look into that for some deeper dive.
For me, when I go to other cities, you're usually on a pretty tight schedule. And it's easier to get a cab and say, I want to go here, or Uber, I want to go here, instead of getting on a bus and wondering how long it's going to take me to get there. So I think time, when people are on even a business trip or recreation, whatever it happens to be, time is important to the people. And when they get on a bus, I've taken a bus when I was in Charlotte, I believe, but I didn't know how long it was going to take me. I didn't know where I was going, and so unfamiliarity, I guess. Mr. Gibson?
I think
What do you
Mr.
want?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that happened to me recently in DC. We decided to take rail, and it ended up taking us much longer. And in fact, we had to readjust our schedule and didn't get to do some of the things that we wanted to do because it was just not, it was a matter of convenience and timing. And perhaps if we understood the schedule better, we might have been able to adjust, but it was a little bit of an eye-opener. We thought it was going to be easy to use the rail system, just in terms of the whole timing. But it was convenience and timing, and you're spot on. That's what's happened. In terms of business travel, now, if you're on leisure travel, it really doesn't, it doesn't work backwards, because your time schedules are somewhat more flexible than they are rather than in a business trip where you have to be somewhere at a time certain.
Well, and I guess my comment too, Chairman, to yours and Commissioner Hartung's, is that, for convention space, people who are exhibiting at a convention center, those individuals are going to travel to the convention and stay all day long, and there isn't really a time constraint, mass transit. When we're talking about tens of thousands of people coming to the area to go and visit a show, that's where really I want to start exhibiting. How do we maybe work towards that, where it's moving people from a property to a convention space, not necessarily business travel, but more convention travel that would be conducive to a bus route or a mass transit route.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Mr. Gibb? We'll get to you.
And Doctor, I'm sorry, I just wanted to tell you, every time I wrote down a question, you answered it on virtually the next page. Wonderful, complete report. I'm very impressed with how thorough it was. And I wrote down several things, and then suddenly, boom, you hit it. And so it was, you really did your homework on this. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Gibson?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Schwan, I think you only scratched the surface on what those data sets really show. I think we intend on drilling down into the data a little bit more and then doing, hate to use the term, a roadshow, and perhaps come to RSCVA with a more detailed drill down of the visitor information, come and talk to the entities, EDON, even go over to Story County and use some of this data to really drill through what the real issues are. And I think that's something you can expect to see when you all put your other hats on and you see us out making those presentations, because there's a lot of data here. I mean, it's a mind-boggling data set, and it's really going to take us a while to mine that data and really get to a lot of the issues, definitions, exercises we need to do. So,
Okay. If
And
there
thank you, Schwinn.
no other questions, looking for a motion to accept the report?
So moved, Chairman.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Great report, Schwinn. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Good job. Okay, 7.1 was pulled from the April 5th agenda. We'll go to legal issues. Dale?
With the rescheduling of this meeting and some other things and the workshop on the 20th, we haven't had an opportunity for me to brief you on pending litigation. So I'd really like to do that at the May meeting. If you guys could kind of plan on your calendar for maybe an 8:15 meeting prior to the 9 o'clock meeting so that I could take you through the cases that are
Denise,
out
you
there.
can put that on our schedule. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Seeing none, I'll open up for public comment. Anybody in the public wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission. Member items, any, Mr. Hartshorn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Gibson, this is something that we've talked about on a number of occasions in the past. When can we look at, and I think this will go to, there you are, Mr. Jickling. I'm searching the audience for you, and there you are. Looking at a plan for all active military and veterans to ride our buses for no charge. If they're in a military uniform, let them ride the buses. If they've got an active military ID, let them ride the buses. If they're veterans, let's create some type of a system whereby they can come in and get a card where they can, ride for free. I mean, this is the least we can do for these folks.
Yeah, David Jickling, Director of Public Transportation and Operations. We will bring you some information at the workshop in April. It's a pretty substantial revenue hit if we were to do that because of the percentage of veterans and active duty military that ride our system. But we can certainly talk about that and see what the pleasure of the commission may be.
Okay. And then, and I'm sure we have we looked at we had a fellow come up earlier and make public comment about one of the routes. Have we looked at exchanging some access rides over to Uber? I mean, I was floored how reasonable Uber was when we were in DC. I mean, it was just downright reasonable. I know that it may not be as easy if we have some disabled riders to use an Uber app. I don't know what Uber has done to accommodate that, but we may be able to substantially cut our budget, and we may have already looked at that, and I'm just not aware of it. I'm not up to speed.
Well, we have had conversations with Uber and Lyft on paratransit applications, how they might be involved. Uber thus far is not really engaged in that. That's not part of their business model so much. Lyft has shown some interest, and in fact, the nonprofit Sierra Nevada Transit Coalition that we help fund through our 5310 program is actually doing a demonstration with Lyft on sort of some gift certificates for folks that they can use and not necessarily have to use a phone app, et cetera.
I see.
So I think there is some possibility there. All those things are things that we're going to continue to explore. But right now, with the federal regulatory process of having to drug test drivers and various insurance and other kinds of things, what transit systems are starting to do is people are opting out of those requirements in order to use Ubers and Lyfts as a paratransit option, where they're essentially being part of our program, but they're recognizing the risk of being in that program.
Right.
Uber also is not using Lyft vehicles. That's a tricky issue.
Yes. No, exactly.
So there's a lot of, I think,
So
exciting
it just depends on the
possibilities.
disability is what
Yeah,
you're telling me.
yeah.
If they're
So-
wheelchair bound, then obviously Uber
doesn't
wouldn't
work
be
so
a,
well.
yeah,
Yeah.
but if they're not wheelchair bound, then there certainly might be
There's some
some options.
possibilities there. So we're going to continue to explore that. Just right now, nationally, it would appear that that is not quite the business model that those companies are seeing profitable yet. But as you'll hear more later about the microtransit concept that we're
Right.
looking at, that's essentially using public transportation, transit services as a Uber Lyft type model application. So I think there's some opportunities there that we'll be exploring for sure.
Thank you.
bet.
Look forward to seeing that. And then finally, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to thank Mr. Anthony Walklaw for being up here today, and I'd like to thank Mr. Ryan Tatter as our guests. It's always great to have them sit up here with us and sort of learn part of the process, and you never know. You just never know who is going to be sitting here next.
Do we have a comment coming from you? No, I saw the microphone up at your face, you sure?
Did you want to make a comment? Decoration.
Okay, listen, for me, I'd like to applaud the RTC giving free rides on the basketball game, the Sweet 16 game that we lost by a point, but that just shows RTC stepping up to the plate. That was kind of a last-minute decision, and it was a good idea. Mike, do you have any?
They don't step up to the plate, to the hoop.
To the hoop.
Get it right. Get the jargon right.
Mr. Chairman, Michael Moreno, Public Affairs Manager. I don't have any numbers as of yet, but I expect to have those coming in next week.
Okay.
But it was a great opportunity to support the Wolfpack and really bring out community pride, and so we were excited to be able to offer that service to the community.
Good stuff. Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Chairman, I just have one quick comment. This morning I ran into a young man who's a social worker who wanted, and I wanted to extend this to RTC, his thanks and gratitude. He said, he commended us on all the work we've done in regards to expediting the ability for dialysis patients to now get approved for access rides within a week's time, where it used to take about a month, he said, to run those applications through. So Mr. Chickling and all those in transit, I want to thank you for expediting those things for those dialysis patients. It seems to be working, and the response from the public has been great. And he took the time to pull me aside this morning and wanted me to extend that to you guys. So great work. I really appreciate it.
Okay, Mr. Hartung.
On Commissioner Lucy's comment, that's a great comment. I had a family member who was on dialysis, and I had an opportunity to spend a great deal of time, and I will say sadly, in a dialysis center, but it gives these folks life, and many of them could utilize Uber that are utilizing Lyft right now. Some are capable of doing ride. It just depends on how intense what they refer to as a dialytic hangover is afterwards. But Uber would be a perfect scenario because many of them are not wheelchair bound. They're ambulatory. They can get up and walk. So I think that would be a great scenario where we could really potentially reduce some costs. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Any other comments? I'd like to thank our temporary commissioners over there. Thanks for coming up to the dais. And without objection, we are adjourned.